Welcome to the channel, Rumple Media. I'm your host, Stilts, where we talk about sports, gaming, next gen, and retro, and we'll dive into some media, some film, and maybe some series. The topic of today's video is the Allen Iverson trade from the 76ers to the Denver Nuggets, and we're going to be taking a deep dive into this and looking at the family tree associated with this trade. At the beginning of the 2006-2007 season, Allen Iverson was reported to have demanded a trade. In hindsight, this was actually not true. The organization felt pressure from the media and decided to deal the guard. He was dealt to the Denver Nuggets in return for 4 assets. Let's take a look at all 4. First, we got Quincy Miller. He played 221 games and scored 3,510 points for the 76ers. Eventually, he signed with the Blazers after playing a few seasons. Then we got Joe Smith. He played 54 games, scored 497 points, and eventually signed with the Bulls after that season. Next, they received the 21st overall pick, which actually they used on a guy named Daquan Cook, who never actually played for them. He was flipped for Jason Smith, who played 132 games and scored 529 points. Eventually, Jason Smith was packaged with Willie Green for a guy named Darius Songalia. He didn't really play much, but he is best known for this shot off of his shoulder on his own net. And along with Songalia, they got a guy named Craig Brackens, who played 17 games but ended up in Europe as a free agent. Next, we're going to take a look at the 30th pick, and this was kind of a strange one. In the draft, they actually ended up using the pick on Petteri Kaponen. He was a bit of a draft and stash, and he was from Finland. He actually had a pretty good international career. However, he was flipped on draft night for Derek Byers, who was the 42nd overall pick. And that was a bit strange to me because they just literally traded the 30th pick for the 42nd pick without getting any assets in return. So part of me wants to think that maybe they made a mistake and said the wrong name over the phone. Who knows? The GM was probably like, I said Jason Caputo, not Petteri Kaponen. And so that brings us to the end of the 76ers side in the Allen Iverson trade. They received a total of 434 games from their assets and scored 4,582 points, good enough for just over 10 points per game. When I got to this point in the video, I kind of was a little bit disappointed. I was expecting this part of the trade to be a lot more complex, and it really wasn't. And then I started working on the Denver side, and it became apparent Masai Ujiri is a mastermind. Denver received 2 assets in this trade. Allen Iverson, obviously, who played 2 seasons and scored 3,461 points. The trade paired Iverson with Carmelo Anthony. This meant that the number 1 and number 2 scorers in the previous NBA season would both play on the same team in Denver the next year. Now let's move on and look at the other asset involved in the trade, Ivan McFarland. Unfortunately, he did not play any games for the Nuggets, but he did play 11 games in the NBA for the 76ers. Couldn't find any footage of him, but here's a picture of him smiling. So after playing 2 seasons with the Nuggets, Allen Iverson was actually flipped for a package of 3 players, Chauncey Billups, Antonio McDyess, and Cheek Sam. Cheek Sam only played 6 games for the Nuggets, but he gave us this great Brandon Roy facial dunk. Wow, Brandon Roy was good. Damn. Cheek Sam was eventually traded for a 2nd round pick, which became Landry Fields, and that was packaged with Torian Green and Bobby Jones. And in return, they received Ronaldo Balkman, who played 71 games and scored 291 points for the Nuggets. Next, we have Antonio McDyess, who played 211 games, scored 4,183 points, and had some ridiculous dunks. Check some of these out. The kids love it. Moving on, we have Chauncey Billups, who played 58 games for the Nuggets and ended up scoring 736 points over 1 season. He was eventually packaged with Ronaldo Balkman and Carmelo Anthony, which finally brought the Melo era in Denver to an end. The Nuggets received quite the package for Melo. Let's take a look. We got 4 players and 4 picks. So let's get right to it. Wilson Chandler, he played 357 games, scoring 4,683 points. He had a long career with the Nuggets. Next up is Danilo Gallinari. He also had a long career with the Nuggets, playing 303 games and scoring 4,898 points. He became a fan favorite in Denver, hitting some really clutch shots. Next we have Raymond Felton, and I'll let him tell you how he felt about being traded to Denver.
See, I was trying to cop a house in Harlem, but he told me to rent out at Howard Johnson. I ain't know what was going on, but I see how y'all get down now. Alright.
So yeah, Raymond didn't last very long with the Nuggets. Next up we got Timothy Mozgov. He had a nice long career with the Denver Nuggets, and my buddy told me to put this in the video.
Get this weak stuff out of here. I'm hungry for the Brew Garden. Fabulous food, mind spirits, fantastic people. My home away from home.
Alright, on to the first round pick. It became Dario Saric, who played in the NBA a bunch. And gave us that nice crossover. Then we got a second round pick, which actually ended up being Romero Osby. They didn't actually use either of those picks. However, they did use this third second round pick, and they drafted a guy named Quincy Miller. He played 59 games and scored 266 points before being waived. Now let's take a look at the rest of the assets that were involved in the Melo deal. Wilson Chandler, after a long career in Denver, ended up getting traded for cash to the 76ers. Danilo Gallinari, as well, had a nice long career in Denver, and he was eventually traded for a 2019 second round pick, which actually became Cody Martin, who played in the NBA. However, that pick was packaged with Justin Jackson. No, not that Justin Jackson, this Justin Jackson from Toronto, Ontario. And they were dealt for a prospect named Jared Vanderbilt. Vanderbilt played 26 games and scored 34 points for the Nuggets. He also gave us this one free throw in garbage time in a game up by 40 that made Isaiah Thomas so happy. You might want to rethink your NBA career if making one free throw in garbage time makes your team this happy. Not surprisingly, shortly after that clip, he was packaged with Malik Beasley and Juancho Hernan-Gomez as the star of Hustle. And in return, they actually got quite a nice package of NBA talent, the first of which was Keita Bates-Diop. He didn't have such a great career in Denver. As you can see from the clip, he played 7 games and was waived after scoring 37 points in the bubble. Next, we got Noah Vonleh. He also played 7 games in the bubble and scored 13 points and then signed with the Bulls. And Shabazz Napier, who was famous for...
hungry nights that we don't have enough money to get food.
Unfortunately, Shabazz didn't play for the Nuggets, and he was traded for Jordan McRae, who was waived after playing 4 games and scoring 9 points, but had that awesome 360 dunk. And we get to Raymond Felton finally. After 21 games and 24 points, he was flipped for Andre Miller and Jordan Hamilton. Andre Miller, who was in the other side of the deal, actually ends up coming back for his second stint in Denver and plays 269 games and scores more points for Denver than he does for the 76ers. And we got Jordan Hamilton. He's another player that actually did play games for Denver, 105, and he scored 589 points with some nice highlight dunks, as you can see right here. Now let's see what happened with Andre Miller. He played 269 games and then eventually got packaged with a second round pick for Jan Vesely. He played 21 games and scored 93 points and then eventually played in Europe. Jordan Hamilton ended up being traded for Aaron Brooks, and he played 29 games, scoring 346 points, and then was signed with Chicago. And that brings us back to the Brew Garden addict, Timothy Mozgov. He played 213 games and then was dealt for 2 first-round picks. They didn't actually use the picks, but I followed them, and one of them became Harry Giles. The other pick became Furkan Korkmaz. Furkan Korkmaz had a pretty successful career for the 76ers. However, Denver traded the pick for your boy, Cenk Akyol, who played 0 games and scored 0 points, but had a kind of successful career in Turkey. Your boy Cenk got traded eventually for Mo Williams, a veteran at the time who ended up being waived before playing a game for the Nuggets. And now let's go back and take a look at the other first-round pick, which ended up becoming Harry Giles. They ended up trading that pick for a nice package which included Mason Plumlee and a second-round pick. Little known fact, Mason Plumlee has one of the biggest packages in the NBA. He played 244 games and scored 1,843 points before signing with Detroit when his contract ran out. The second round pick that they received with Plumlee became Justin Jackson. Yes, that Justin Jackson this time. However, it was packaged before used with Emmanuel Mudiay? I don't know. They got Devin Harris. He played 27 games and scored 222 points before getting signed with Dallas in the offseason when his contract ran out. And now let's take a look at those two first-round picks that became Dario Saric and Romero Osby. They didn't use them. They in fact traded them for Andre Iguodala, who played one season and scored 1,038 points, including this basket, which was nominated for Crossover of the Year. That's just pretty nasty, Andre. After playing 80 games for the Nuggets, he was flipped for a second-round pick and Randy Foye. Randy Foye? I don't know. Randy played 185 games for the Nuggets and scored 1,826 points, including this buzzer beater for a game winner. After playing 185 games for Denver, he established himself as a key rotational piece in the NBA and eventually was dealt for a package of DJ Augustine, Steve Novak, and 2 second-round picks. DJ Augustine was pretty much the only one of these assets that worked out at all, playing 28 games for the Nuggets and scoring 325 points. Steve Novak ended up spending some good years with the New York Knicks, and the 2 second-round picks were actually used, but not well. Peter Corneli was the first one, and then Daniel Hamilton. Corneli actually played 13 games and scored 14 points. Hamilton in the end became $730,000 worth of cash. Now let's go take a look at that other second-round pick they acquired with Randy Foye. This time they actually used the pick again, and they select Thomas Welsh, who eventually was waived after playing 11 games and scoring 18 points. But he gave us this clip of him hitting a three-pointer in garbage time, and just look how happy this guy is, how happy everyone is for him. He's just accomplished his dream of playing in the NBA and hitting a three-pointer. Way to go, Thomas. Way to accomplish your dreams. And now let's look at that last second-round pick that they got via Golden State. They actually used this on Quincy Miller. He was also waived after playing about a season, 59 games, scoring 266 points for the Denver Nuggets. And we can't really mention him without showing this Andre Iguodala crossover, which may possibly be the crossover of the decade, busted on Quincy Miller. That's the second one of the video, Andre, and that's just nasty. And that finally brings us to the last asset they acquired in this deal. And when I first started making this video, it was the least attractive asset in the whole entire video. An option to pick swap your first round pick with the other team. However, after researching the whole trade, I realized that this was actually the most interesting part of the entire deal. The pick swap wouldn't come to fruition for 3 years. If the Denver Nuggets had a better record than the New York Knicks, then they could elect to swap picks. New York, at that time, had a condition where they were allergic to draft picks, had already dealt their pick to Toronto for Andrea Bargnani. At the draft lottery, the Knicks received the 7th pick and the Denver Nuggets received the 9th pick. And that, in effect, triggered the pick swap.
With the 7th pick in the 2016 NBA Draft, the Denver Nuggets select Jamal Murray from Kitchener, Canada, and the University of Kentucky.
Yes, that's right. This seemingly inconsequential pick swap actually was the difference between Jamal Murray and Jakob Poeltl. Poeltl? Who knows? Anyways, I don't need to tell you, Jamal Murray is a stud and worked out great for the Denver Nuggets and still is working out great. Unfortunately, he was injured this last season, but we're looking forward to the return of Jamal Murray to the Denver Nuggets alongside Jokic for a possible run at a championship in the future. And that brings us to the end of the Allen Iverson trade from the 76ers to the Denver Nuggets and its impact on today's NBA. As you can see, it was a pretty complex trade tree for the Nuggets, and this shows that Masai really likes to flip assets and get everything that he can. And in total, they got a total of 2,835 games and over 36,002 points scored. And that brings us to the end of the video. Thanks for watching, and let me know in the comments if you have any ideas for the next video and the next trade I should do. Be sure to not subscribe to the channel and smash that dislike button, because we ain't doing this like the rest of you.